Today's referendum is the culmination of a constitutional recognition push dating back more than 15 years. At the 2007 election, both Kevin Rudd and John Howard promised to support constitutional change, recognising Indigenous Australians. Several committees continued that process over the next 8 years before Tony Abbott gathered Indigenous leaders together at a seminal summit in 2015. But since then, a movement that began with bipartisan backing has splintered, dividing the nation and Labor and Liberal. In a moment, we'll get our panel's reflections on the rocky road to tonight's referendum. But first, here's a quick recap of the politics and personalities that have dominated this debate.
An historic day in Sydney as influential Indigenous people arrived to talk constitutional change.
Political and Indigenous leaders planning a nationwide vote on Indigenous recognition.
We are good enough, big enough and brave enough to do this.
There'll now be a series of community conferences throughout Australia,
with a re-energised push for constitutional recognition.
A referendum is planned to try to change it.
Tony Abbott is moving to hold a referendum to recognise Aboriginal peoples in the Australian Constitution.
Rectify our Constitution, which is appallingly racist.
Tony Abbott still wants the recognition referendum to happen in May 2017.
I tell you what, there's certainly no shortage of horses.
Leadership changes are never easy for our country. Of course, there's much that I had still wanted to do. Constitutional recognition of Indigenous people.
There's a process going on which has bipartisan support. There is a referendum council.
The referendum council was set up by the Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition to recommend the next steps to a new referendum. To do this, the council is consulting with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities.
Think about how we move ahead, how we make substantive change.
It is the bridge between the communities and ultimately the government and what may be put to the Australian people.
Now, this meeting is a culmination of 12 community dialogues.
But you know, this is a difficult conversation. 7 people have left the room.
Now, they're claiming that they haven't been listened to.
We, as sovereign First Nations people, reject constitutional recognition.
Almost 300 people put their signature to this historic statement.
A product of 2 years' consultation with First Nations groups right around Australia, it calls for voice, treaty and truth in that order.
Megan read the statement for the very first time.
We call for the establishment of a First Nations voice.
I felt nervous for the reception.
It's very short on detail. Couldn't be shorter on detail, in fact.
And I didn't know what the reception to the statement might be.
It would be, in effect, a third chamber.
We seek to be heard.
It would have no prospect of success whatsoever.
This is going to be a great bipartisan process where we'll try and advance the cause of Indigenous recognition.
Our work is informed by the regional dialogues undertaken by the Referendum Council last year,
where the Uluru Statement recommended a First Nations voice to advise the Australian Parliament.
Australia is ready.
How do we identify what Aboriginal people actually want?
The Uluru process has identified a clear position on what Aboriginal people wanted.
It's not the government's policy. The Morrison government is committed to a genuine co-design process as the next step in the constitutional recognition journey.
Aboriginal leaders Marsha Langdon and Tom Calma will co-chair an advisory group to advise the government on how to implement an Indigenous voice to government.
I'm involved in the national program to deliver an Indigenous voice for this country. Now, there's an interim report out, there are proposals out there.
Still no clear consensus proposal which would suggest mainstream support in the Indigenous community or elsewhere. It's not our policy to have a referendum on the voice, so why would I be doing that?
The 31st Prime Minister of Australia.
I commit to the Uluru Statement from the heart and soul.
The National Party has made a position
that we will not support the voice.
It is not racist to disagree.
On a crucial day for The Voice, the Prime Minister struggling to find his.
For many, this moment has been a very long time in the making.
An emotional Anthony Albanese confirming a key decision has been made.
The question that Australians will be asked at this year's referendum is a very simple one. To not put this to a vote is to concede defeat.
But there was a resounding no to the Prime Minister's Canberra voice. The Prime Minister is dividing our country, and the Liberal Party seeks to unite our country.
Today's decision is about Liberal Party internals.
Walking in to announce he's walking away.
Today I'm resigning without rancour.
His position is at odds with the overwhelming majority of the Liberal Party members.
Referendum day will be the 14th of October.
And it is that old rule of divide and conquer.
And it's all Albo. He's the one who started this.
How can you in good conscience drive the country to a divisive referendum on October 14?
I would have to say is probably the most divisive referendum. Enough is enough. We can't continue down this path of destruction.
And when you start to understand the meaning of this country, you understand that we do not walk backwards. We only ever move forwards.
What we're hoping Australians do, walk a few feet into a polling booth and write 3 letters, YES.